President Biden's first press conference was decidedly different than ones held by President Trump and nearly every other president. But critics pointed out one particular moment when he answered a question about North Korea. Watch this.
What is your red line on North Korea?
Let me say that, number one, UN Resolution 1718 was violated by those particular missiles that were tested. Number one. We're consulting with our allies and partners, and there will be responses if they choose to escalate. We will respond accordingly.
Amir Fakhravar is the Senate chairman of the National Iranian Congress. He joins us live, and our panelists also back with us, Ted Harvey and David Grosso. Amir, thank you for joining us for this discussion here. What's interesting, I think a lot of people tuning in were noting that President Biden appeared to be using almost a cheat sheet when answering questions specifically about foreign policy and also North Korea as well. Did this stand out to you, Amir? Any idea why he might be relying so heavily on these notes?
Because he's confused and he has a lot of advisors around himself. He doesn't know which one he should follow when you are so weak. And it was a lot of issue for you to go to the White House before going there. And then you should be confused then. And right now, everybody from several sides, they are trying to have influence and regarding dealing with the dictators, right? Like North Korean dictators, Iranian Mullahs, Iranian dictators. We know a lot of agent of influence from Iranian government, at least we know that part. It's the laundry list of them. They are right now, they have the official positions at the White House, at the National Security Council, at the different very high level ranking. And yeah, definitely Iran is trying to send some message and make sure they can influence the policies. And I'm pretty sure that China and North Korea, they are doing that. That's the reason. He's confused. He cannot answer correctly any question. And that's the worst thing. When you are facing dictators, you should not look weak. Because the dictators, they can understand this better than anybody else, and they will use this opportunity to harm United States.
Well, Amir, quite frankly, this was clearly on the international stage. I'm sure many world leaders were tuning in to watch the press conference. I know a lot of American journalists and Americans as well were curious what the president would say. It had been more than 60 days since he'd taken questions from the press. Yesterday, we also learned that President Biden says the upcoming May 1st deadline to remove U.S. troops from Afghanistan will be, quote, hard to meet, citing some tactical reasons for the delay, emphasizing it was not his intention that they would stay there long, though. Ted, this is different than sort of the promise that was made along the campaign trail. Why now are we just learning his intentions?
Well, I think Biden is learning what Obama learned and what we saw with Trump, that it's much harder than they think on the campaign trail to go out there and say we're going to pull our troops out. They are there in a quagmire, and I think that every administration has desperately wanted to try to get out, but it's not as easily as they think it will be, and Biden is no different.
Also, we've learned that last month, U.S. Border Patrol agents had arrested 11 Iranian migrants for crossing the border illegally in Arizona. Iran considered a special interest country to the U.S. Amir, I'll go to you on this. What's really going on here? Is this a security threat we should be concerned about?
Oh, definitely. Let me tell you the brief history. After the Iranian Revolution in 1979, Iran created a terrorist group called Hezbollah, very well funded with Iranian petrodollars in the south of Lebanon, exactly at the border with Israel, because Israel is little Satan to them, to the Iranian mullahs. And the great Satan is United States. Then during last 20 years, at least, regime started to spend a lot of money in Mexico, in Venezuela, in South America, and can create the Hispanic version of Hezbollah here. And even some of the Iranian IRGC commanders, That was the order to them from Supreme Leader to come to Mexico and get married. You know, the Muslims, they can get married officially 4 times. To get married in Mexico and build the network with the cartels, Mexican cartels. They have a very good relationship with the cartels right now, IRGC, Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And those people, when right now they can see the big window of opportunity because of the very dangerous policy, border policy of Biden, definitely they will send a lot of people to United States.
Yeah.
And it's a disaster. Everybody they are talking about, the kids are coming.
Yes.
I'm not worried about that as much as I'm worried about hundreds of thousands of terrorists are coming to this country from the border when it's widely open.
Well, clearly, I mean, the President Biden, you know, is aware at least of the surge of migrants, although he continues to blame it on the previous administration. As we talk about internationally, people are aware of what's happening, this sort of disarray, this chaos, this crisis taking place, perhaps taking advantage of it. David, I just want to go back to you on this moment of the press briefing and talk to you about what you thought of the use of notes coming to light. Again, we've heard from previous historians saying that this isn't very common, that the president would need to reference some notes when answering questions from the press, and also the fact that there was a pre-selected group of reporters who were chosen. Quite frankly, we could see from the photos emerging that they had their numbers of who to call on. David, what did you make of how the press briefing actually played out?
You know, we've gone from one galaxy to another, like 2 alternative realities, right? Trump was so off script. We saw him speak in front of the helicopter. You know, he was very exciting from a journalistic standpoint, right? Because you never knew what was going to happen. So we went from chaos to like extreme structure. So I'm a journalist. So from a journalist perspective, it seems like we're in a different world. It's a different reality. And probably both styles are too extreme in my book. It's hard to cover Trump, but in that same vein, as a journalist, just speaking practically and not politically, it's probably even tougher to cover Biden because there's been a blackout for 60 days. And the one moment we had to cover this was all pre-planned, all pre-scripted, and really didn't contain any great surprises. They're calling it the most boring news conference in history. So, you know, being a journalist these days is not easy, and you know that yourself over there at NewsMax.
Yeah, well, quite frankly, one of the headlines that came out of the briefing, whether you agree with it or not, was the fact that the president never chose or called on any conservative outlets or reporters from conservative outlets as well. So that makes another headline there. Guys, we will wait and see when the press will have access to another one of these briefings. In the meantime, though, Amir, thank you for your time. We appreciate your insight. And our panelists, Ted and David, please stay with us. Thanks so much.